Carnage, destruction, terror. What you are looking at is the result of a nuclear nightmare. And no, not the atomic bomb, but rather an atomic monster, known as Godzilla. Weighing in at 20,000 tons and standing at 164 feet tall, Godzilla seems like an impossible work of science fiction, yet the origins of the monster are deeply rooted in our reality. It's the living embodiment of nuclear warfare, a symbol tragically spawned from the very real destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II. But beyond the decimation of two prominent cities, it was actually an accident involving a small tuna trawler that struck the deepest nerve in post-war Japan, known, coincidentally, as the Lucky Dragon. To a clever film producer, this tragic incident spelled opportunity. Accompany that with director Ishiro Honda's own horrific experiences with war, and we have Godzilla, the anti-war monster. Our story begins several decades before World War II with the young aspiring filmmaker Ishiro Honda. Described as kind and reserved, Ishiro had no interest in the foreign affairs Japan entangled themselves with during the early 20th century. Instead, Honda wanted to tell stories. He wanted to be a kantoku, aka a movie director. However, Ishiro's path to the latter would have an unfortunate detour with the former. After graduating high school, he propelled himself into a newly established film major program at the Nihon University. As far as he knew, his dreams were on track. He got a job at an up-and-coming film studio where he began to forge industry bonds. It's also where he met lifelong friend Akira Kurosawa and also his eventual wife, Kimi Yamasaki. However, it all came to a devastating halt when in the fall of 1934, he was drafted into the Japanese army. Having been adamantly anti-war, his draft was, as he claimed, the saddest thing that could happen to him. He was 23 years old.
At the time Ishiro Honda was drafted into the Imperial Army, he was just embarking on his dream of becoming a filmmaker. But he went into his military service with the attitude that he would complete that service and eventually go back to his civilian life and pursue his dream. But what happened was there was a series of events that really thwarted his trajectory as a filmmaker, and he would end up spending the better part of a decade, from roughly 1936 to 1945, in the Imperial Army.
Full of resentment, Ishiro knew that he had no choice, and that protesting would only make matters worse. If I were to show my anti-war feelings, then I'm sure I would not have survived, not even a day. During his deployment, Honda would find himself sent back and forth overseas, occupying different areas of China. He'd survive countless battles and endure the horrors of war firsthand along the way. My superior officer killed a young Korean today with his bayonet. I'm trying to adjust to the environment around me, but if you were a normal person in this place, you'd either kill yourself or go crazy. He maintained his humanity and promised to treat the Chinese without animosity and his fellow soldiers with dignity. Then, on August 6, 1945, Japan changed forever. The United States dropped its first atomic bomb, codenamed Little Boy, on Hiroshima, resulting in 15 kilotons of force, a fireball 370 meters in diameter, and temperatures as high as 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. People were incinerated, gruesomely burned, and crushed by debris. It killed an estimate of 140,000 people, 40% of the city's population. 3 days later, Fat Man, another bomb, was dropped on Nagasaki, killing an estimate of 74,000 people, 29% of its population. The cities were left in ruins, trees stripped of life, covered in layers of highly radioactive ash, later known as Black Rain. The bombings were the diabolical end to World War II, and after 8 years, Ishiro Honda could finally go home.
Honda came home in the spring of 1946. And that experience was harrowing in itself. These soldiers were packed onto crowded ships. They were given some money for train fare and some food and put on trains and sent home. And Honda's train passed through the ruins of the city of Hiroshima. What he saw really had a profound effect on him. He saw the flattened ruins of an entire city that had been decimated by the atomic bomb. This image would stay with him, and this is why when he would receive the assignment to direct Godzilla nearly a decade later, he would decide to use all of that experience that he had in the war, and more specifically the experience of witnessing the destruction of the atomic bomb, and basically imbue the monster Godzilla with all of that destructive power, and use the film as more than just a monster movie, but as a cautionary tale and a warning to the world about the dangers of atomic weapons and the folly of the nuclear arms race.
He arrived home in March of 1946. At nearly 35 years old, Honda was eager to start his life over. I lived and survived only by thinking, when can I go home? When can I make movies again? The bombings in Honda's story were all but a few pieces in the creation of cinema's monster satire. The final domino had yet to fall. Japan's anxieties remained high long after the war's end, with many of the bombing's survivors undergoing unexpected discrimination. Days after the bombs fell, survivors began showing symptoms of radiation poisoning. They were labeled as hibakusha, which literally translates to atomic bomb-affected people. Symptoms included hair loss, bleeding from the gums, purple spots, pain, fevers, often resulting in death. The bombs continued to claim lives, even long after they had fallen. Rumors spread that radiation poisoning was contagious, and the public became increasingly terrified of hibakusha. Eventually, bombing survivors were turned away from homes and even refused food from farms. The hibakusha were cast out and tensions continued to rise. Japan lived in constant paranoia of another attack, a fear that was validated as the US continued to test thermonuclear bombs right outside of Japan and Korea during the Cold War. And then tragedy struck, confirming Japan's paranoia. On March 1st, 1954, the US tested a hydrogen bomb near the Marshall Islands, a bomb that was twice as powerful as anticipated. Its nuclear fallout formed into a fine white ash that was carried by the wind, where it later showered the Lucky Dragon tuna vessel and its 23 crew members for 3 hours. That ash, later called Shi no Hai, or death ash, stuck to the bodies and hair of the fishermen. The crew suffered the same symptoms of the hibakusha. On September 23rd, chief radio operator of the Lucky Dragon, Akichi Kabayama, died at the age of 40, a victim of the hydrogen bomb. The events resulted in panic, causing an anti-nuclear movement, a tuna boycott from fear of contaminated fish, and for the hibakusha, right as they began to put their lives together, everything seemed to unravel all at once. Japan was in hysteria. But through the hysteria and fear, some saw an opportunity. Japanese film producer Tomoyuki Tanaka took notice of America's wave of successful monster films like King Kong, Mighty Joe Young, and The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, and was looking for a chance to ride the wave. Tanaka worked fast to co-opt the Lucky Dragon incident and the fear it ensued, and began pitching it as the foundation of Japan's own monster movie. The idea fell into Ishiro Honda's hands. With it, he set out to make more than a B-movie monster film. It was a chance to inject his own views and experiences and tell a serious story that reflected the fears and terrors of a post-war Japan. If Godzilla had been a dinosaur or some other animal, he would have been killed by just one cannonball. But if he were equal to an atomic bomb, we wouldn't know what to do. So, I took the characteristics of an atomic bomb and applied them to Godzilla. Wasting no time, Godzilla opens with its own retelling of the Lucky Dragon incident, showing a tuna trawler encountering him in the middle of the ocean. From Godzilla's presence alone, the fishermen are exposed to massive amounts of radiation, which precisely emulates the real-life crew members of the Lucky Dragon, who were exposed to the nuclear fallout of the hydrogen bomb test. Later, headlines read Atomic Tuna, which is a direct parallel of the fish boycott that followed the Lucky Dragon incident. Most of the film's second act spends time slowly building tension and speculation to Godzilla's next attack, like waiting for the next bomb to drop. It isn't until an hour in that Godzilla finally emerges again from the ocean, ravaging through buildings and power lines. When he finally unleashes his blast, the city is set aflame, people are vaporized, while others scramble to safety, evoking the same terror and visuals of an atomic bomb. The imagery of the city's decimation is uncanny to Hiroshima and Nagasaki's bombings. Slowly, the film takes its time to pan through the leveled plains of what once was like Honda observed from his train window in 1946. The aftermath is devastating, from showing children measured for radiation poisoning to the dead carried away in stretchers. One particular shot of a child bursting into screams in fear and sadness exemplify the horror of the situation. The film's stance on war is also firmly apparent through its characters and dialogue, especially Dr. Serizawa, the scientist who created the oxygen bomb, the Godzilla killer.
原爆対原爆、水爆対水爆、その上さらにこの新しい恐怖の武器を人類の上に加えることは科学者として、いや、一個の人間として許すわけにはいかない。
Serizawa's character can easily be seen as a direct portrayal of real-life theoretical physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, who famously said,
"Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
After the Japan bombings and the war was over, Oppenheimer lobbied for control over nuclear power in an effort to avert the spread and production of the very weapon he helped create, a testament echoed by Dr. Serizawa.
もしも兵器として使用されたならば、それこそ水爆と同じように人類を破滅に導くかもしれません。
The film's tone has a feeling of despair and uncertainty, a feeling that mimics the plea and fear of a post-war Japan. Dr. Serizawa sacrifices himself in the end, not in a heroic attempt to kill Godzilla, but instead to destroy the knowledge behind the oxygen destroyer, in hopes to prevent its recreation ever again. After Godzilla is destroyed, the outcome isn't triumphant. It's curiously tragic and ends rather somberly.
水爆実験が続けて行われるとしたら、あのゴジラの盗塁がまた世界のどこかへ現れてくるかもしれない。
The film's closing line serves as a warning to the danger and vicious horror of nuclear warfare, validating the film's strong anti-war stance.
It's not just the atomic bomb that makes Godzilla what it is. It's really a film about the collective experience of the Japanese people, both during and after the war. I think the reason the film resonated so much and was successful when it came out was that people could recognize not only imagery that looked, just like the firebombing of Tokyo or just like the aftermath of Hiroshima, but they also recognized in the experiences of the people in the film, their country in the span of 10 years was completely transformed. That's the interesting thing to me. You watch this film from 1954. If you try to put your head in the mind of a Japanese viewer watching that, you have to understand, like 10 years before that, their country was completely different.
Godzilla eventually transcended the horror he was founded on, commonly embodying a sympathetic creature that the world would often rely on to protect it from greater threats. Despite its bleak real origins, Ishiro and Toho Company transformed the creature into an iconic anti-hero, with Ishiro routinely returning to the director's chair. Godzilla's impact on popular culture is simply undeniable, and quite remarkably, kickstarted the tokusatsu genre that still remains ever prevalent today, defining an entire industry for Japanese cinema. Godzilla would be used many more times as a means to confront bigger issues, most notably in 1971's Godzilla vs. Ghidorah, which was a reaction to pollution, and again in 2016's Shin Godzilla, which reflected the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami. And of course, we can't possibly ignore America's adaptation of the giant monster and it inadvertently inspired, twisting it into a spectacle of Hollywood action. The most recent film, Godzilla King of the Monsters, molds the monster into a full-blown hero.
My God, Zilla.
And in a bizarre twist, demeans the values and views the original was founded on.
In all of these Americanizations of Godzilla or American adaptations, the true origin of the monster is obscured in some way, and I find that really interesting. Americans have always had, to a certain extent, difficulty discussing Hiroshima and dealing with the fact that, we nuked two Japanese cities. Hollywood has always had trouble taking Godzilla on his own terms, because there's a fear, I think, that the audience won't accept that.
Yet, on the other hand, Godzilla managed to bridge both cultures together. Godzilla's journey into being a positive force could easily be related to Honda's own outlook and positivity on the world, in spite of the horrors he experienced firsthand. But still, 32 films and 6 decades later, Godzilla has been represented as a villain, a hero, and a satire, each era resonating with different audience members for entirely different reasons, a legacy that Ishiro Honda helped cultivate through the years. Thank you so much for watching this episode of True Fiction. Now, Godzilla is near and dear to my heart, so it was a huge honor to be able to do this episode and also research a ton about Ishiro Honda. Next Sunday's episode is about the real, terrifying deaths that inspired Nightmare on Elm Street, so please come back here to GameSpot Universe.